4 months ago, on my 53rd birthday and the 20th anniversary of my company, I decided it was time to plan my succession. Helen was the obvious choice. Competent, dedicated, knowledgeable, respected. I wanted the transition to be gradual and natural, so I convened the board meeting that led to today's explosion. I had prepared a speech on family values and the importance of preserving our company's human essence amid growth. I had not expected Helen to brand it as hypocrisy. If you've followed this story so far, you've likely identified with some aspect of it, as a mother struggling to balance career and family, as a daughter resentful of a parent who prioritized other things, or as a woman forced to choose between personal and professional dreams. Subscribe for more real-life reports like this, stories that show we are not alone in our struggles and that there is always hope for reconciliation and growth, even in the toughest situations, because I believe sharing our experiences is the first step toward healing our wounds and building bridges where walls once stood. Back in the present, after everyone left the conference room, I stayed almost an hour trying to process what had happened. How did we get here? How did love turn into resentment? How did my sacrifices become accusations? I took out my phone and scrolled through old photos I'd saved. Helen as a baby, chubby and smiling. Helen as a child dressed as a princess for Halloween. Helen as a teen on graduation day. In all the photos, she smiled. But when I tried to recall the moments they captured, I noticed something disturbing. In many of them I was not present. I had the photos because Mrs. Constance or a teacher had sent them to me. Then I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I canceled all my afternoon appointments and drove home. Our house, the same one where Helen had grown up, where we had weathered the first hard years after the divorce, where we built our first memories as a family of two. The house felt quiet and strange. I went up to Helen's room, left just as she had when she moved out 3 years ago. There were all the traces of the girl I'd lost along the way: stuffed animals, storybooks we read together, photos of our happy times stuck to the mirror. One in particular caught my eye: us on the beach, when Helen must have been about 8, both of us smiling spontaneously at the camera. I remember that day, a sunny Sunday. I had decided not to work for the first time in months, and we spent it building sandcastles and hunting shells. Helen had said it was the best day of her life. Why had I stopped creating such moments? I sat on her bed, and for the first time in years, let myself cry. I cried for the girl who grew up too fast because her mother was always busy. I cried for missed opportunities, for conversations we never had, for hugs I never gave. I cried out of fear that Helen would see me as a failure if I weren't professionally successful. I cried because I realized that in trying to be the perfect mother who provided every material need, I had forgotten to simply be a present mother. In the midst of this emotional catharsis, I found something that would change everything: a shoebox, tucked in the back of the closet, full of letters Helen had never given me, dozens of them, written over the years, from when she was 10 until just before her graduation. I opened the first with shaking hands. Dear Mom, today you missed my school dance again. The teacher asked where you were, and I told her you were saving the world, because that's how I see you. A superhero who saves the world, but sometimes forgets to save her own daughter. I love you anyway, Helen. Age 10. The second letter was even more heartbreaking. Mom, today I turned 13. You gave me a beautiful, expensive gift, but what I really wanted was for you to stay at the party instead of leaving to take a work call. I sometimes imagine what it would be like if you were a normal mom with normal work hours. Would we be happier? Helen, age 13. I read every letter, one by one, each word hitting me like a punch to the stomach. Helen had held no grudge. She had preserved her love, a hurt, frustrated, but genuine love. She loved me so much she wrote letters she never had the courage to deliver, knowing they would hurt me. She protected my feelings while I unwittingly wounded her. The last letter was from 4 years ago, just before she joined the company. Mom, I decided to accept your offer to work here, not because I want to follow in your footsteps, but because it's the only way I knew to be close to you again. Maybe in the workplace, I can get the attention I never had at home. Maybe you'll see me as competent. Since being your daughter wasn't enough to earn your time, I'll try to earn your professional respect, since your maternal love always depended on your other priorities. Helen, age 26. That final letter made everything clear. Helen had come to the company, not to work with me, but to compete with me, to prove she could be just as good, to finally earn my full attention, and I, blinded by my ambition and the need to keep our company running, had failed to notice that she was crying out for affection through her professional competence. I put the letters away and went to the living room. I took a sheet of paper and began writing my own letter, not a reply to her, but an admission of guilt, a plea for forgiveness, a declaration of love that should have been made long ago. My dear Helen, today you accused me publicly of being an absent mother, and you were right. You said I never asked what you really wanted, and you were right. You said I chose work over family, and you were right. But you don't know why. You don't know why. You don't know that every overtime hour I worked was for you. Every trip I took was to build a better future for us. Every promotion I accepted was so you would never suffer the hardships I did. I wrote for 2 hours, pouring 25 years of suppressed feelings, unspoken fears, and poorly shown love onto the paper. I told of discovering Dad's infidelity, of the fear of losing our home, of the resolve never to be dependent again. I told of sleepless nights planning our future, of secret tears when I realized I was losing my daughter. I told of the pride I felt at each of her achievements, even when she didn't let me show it. When I finished the letter, it was almost 8 p.m. I got in my car and drove to Helen's apartment. She lived in a modern, elegant building, the result of the generous salary she earned at our company. I rang the bell with a racing heart. When she opened the door, her eyes were red and puffy. She had cried too. We stared at each other for a moment that felt like an eternity. "May I come in?" I asked, my voice weaker than I intended. She nodded and stepped aside. Her apartment was a grown-up version of her childhood room, organized, stylish, but with personal touches revealing her personality. There were photos of us on the shelves, old pictures from when she was a child. It gave me a glimmer of hope. "Helen, I found your letters today." She went pale. "You shouldn't have read them." "I should have read them long ago. I should have realized you were crying out for attention through your competence." She sat on the sofa, avoiding my gaze. "It doesn't matter anymore, Mom. We are adults. We've each gone our own way, but our paths crossed today, Helen, in a painful way, because I was too afraid to admit my mistakes sooner." I handed her the letter I had written. "You don't have to read it now, but when you're ready, please do. It's everything I should have told you years ago." Helen took the letter with shaking hands. "Why now, Mom? Why only when I exploded in that meeting? Because I thought I could protect you by hiding my weaknesses. Because I grew up believing a strong mother shows no vulnerability. Because I confused being strong with being distant." For the first time in years, Helen looked directly into my eyes, not with the professional politeness of recent times, but with the emotional intensity I remember from her childhood. "Do you have any idea how it felt growing up feeling like you had to earn your mother's love? How painful it was to see you devote yourself to the company you built for me, but not to me. I devoted myself to you, Helen. Every decision I made was for you, but you never asked me if that's what I wanted." She exploded, tears flowing freely. "I wanted a mother who went to my school play, not one who bought the whole school for me. I wanted a mother who watched movies with me on Sundays, not one who worked Sundays, to give me a better future." I sat beside her, and for the first time in years, embraced her properly. She resisted for a moment, then melted into my arms like she used to when she was little. "I know, my daughter. I know I made a mistake. I know that in trying to be the perfect mother, I forgot to just be your mother." We held each other for minutes, crying together, releasing decades of pain. When we finally separated, Helen wiped her tears and looked at me with a mix of pain and hope. "And now, Mom, how do we fix this?" "I don't know if it can be completely fixed, Helen, but we can start over. We can try to build a relationship as mother and daughter, not as boss and employee." She laughed through her tears. "That will be weird. It's been so long since we were just mother and daughter. Then we'll learn together. We'll discover who we are without our professional masks." Helen opened the letter and began to read silently. I watched as her expression shifted: surprise, pain, understanding, relief. When she finished, she folded the letter carefully and set it aside. "Mom, can I tell you a secret?" I nodded. "I didn't explode in that meeting because I was angry at you. I exploded because I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared of becoming like you. Scared of making the same mistakes. I've been with Daniel for 3 years and he wants to marry me and have children. But I'm panicking at the thought of becoming an absent mother like you, or a frustrated mother who gives up her dreams for her kids. I don't know how to balance it all." Her confession stunned me. Helen was not only battling past wounds, she feared the future. "Helen, you don't have to choose between motherhood and success. You just have to learn from my mistakes." "But how? How do I do it differently?" "First, understand that the quality of time matters more than the quantity of money. Second, remember that children prefer an imperfect present mother over a perfect absent one. Third, don't be afraid to ask for help and admit you can't do it all alone." Helen smiled for the first time that evening. "You're telling me to do the opposite of what you did. I'm telling you to do it better than I did, and I can help you, if you let me." "How?" "By being the present grandmother I couldn't be as a mother. By sharing responsibilities I tried to bear alone. By supporting you so you don't have to choose between family and career." That night we talked until nearly 3 in the morning, about the past, the present, the future, about my mistakes, her fears, and the dreams we could still realize together. We spoke as mother and daughter, as women, as imperfect people trying to get it right. In the following days, we made practical changes. We began having lunch together twice a week, no work talk allowed. I taught Helen recipes my mother had taught me but I never had time to pass on. She showed me her favorite series and films, and we discovered we shared more taste than we had imagined. We started family therapy to have a safe space to process our feelings with professional help. In the company, we also set boundaries. Helen took on more strategic responsibilities, but we established clear rules about work hours and availability. I began delegating more and trusting the team we had built over the years. We realized the company would survive without our 24-hour presence, and even thrive because decisions made from rest and balance are better. 3 months later, Helen called me on a Friday afternoon. "Mom, I have news." "Of course, sweetheart." "Last night, Daniel proposed, and I said yes." A burst of joy exploded in my chest. "Helen, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for both of you. There's more. I want you to help me plan the wedding. Not by hiring the best event firm, but by helping me. Choosing flowers, tasting cakes, deciding decor. Will you do it?" For the first time in decades, tears of pure joy ran down my face. "I would love to. My daughter, I would really love to." Helen's wedding was everything she dreamed of. Intimate, elegant, full of love and meaning. I was present for every detail, and discovered that planning something out of pure love was infinitely more fulfilling than building an empire out of fear of failure. On the wedding day, as I walked her down the aisle, she wanted me to fulfill the traditional role of the father. I felt we had finally found our way back to each other. During her speech at the reception, Helen surprised everyone, especially me. "I want to thank my mother. For a long time, I saw her only as a successful entrepreneur who forgot to be a mom. Today I understand that she was the mother she could be, with the tools she had. She taught me to be strong, independent, and determined. Now, in this new phase of my life, she teaches me something even more important, that true strength includes vulnerability, that independence doesn't mean loneliness, and that determination without love is empty. Thank you, Mom, for showing me that it's never too late to start over. When she finished, she embraced me on the dance floor and whispered, I love you, Mom, as you are, as you were, and as you will be. In that moment, I knew every battle I fought, every sacrifice I made, and every sleepless night had been worth it. Not for the professional success, not for the empire, but for that hug, those words and that forgiveness. 6 months after the wedding, Helen gave me the news I had hoped for most. She was pregnant, and this time, when she told me, she wasn't nervous or afraid. She glowed with confidence. Now I know I can be a mom and still be myself, she said, because I learned from you that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real. During Helen's pregnancy, I experienced something completely new, being present without controlling, supporting without dominating, loving without conditions. I attended doctor's appointments when invited, helped set up the nursery, shared in the fears and expectations of a first-time mom. But most of all, I offered something I didn't know how to give when she was little, my unconditional presence. When my grandson Peter was born, I sat in the hospital waiting room with Daniel. Helen asked that I be the first after the father to hold the baby. When the nurse placed this tiny human in my arms, I felt a mixture of love, gratitude, and redemption I never imagined possible. Look at Peter, I whispered. Your grandma promises to be there for all the important moments of your life, and the not-so-important ones too. Helen, watching from the bed with teary eyes, smiled and said, he's lucky, he has a grandma who learned to balance love with presence. The first 2 years of Peter's life were transformative for our family. I kept my word. I was present, not as the manager who solves everything efficiently, but as the grandmother who changes diapers, reads stories, and gets up in the middle of the night to help Helen through the tough nights. I learned that caring for a small child is physically exhausting but emotionally nourishing, in a way no professional success can match. Helen flourished as a mother. She achieved what I never could: true balance. She worked with competence and dedication, but set firm boundaries. No meetings after 6 p.m., no weekends spent working. She delegated and trusted her team, discovering that the company didn't just survive without her constant availability, it thrived because she made better decisions when rested and centered. You know what's funny, Mom? She said one day, while watching Peter play in the park. I thought having a child would limit my career, but it's actually made me more efficient. When you have limited hours, you learn to use each one wisely. I laughed and acknowledged the irony. It took me 50 years to learn that. You learned it by 30, not alone, she replied, taking my hand. I learned from watching your mistakes and successes. I learned from your experience without repeating all your pain. Those words struck me deeply. I realized my mistakes as a mother weren't in vain. They helped Helen make better choices. My pain served a purpose by preventing her from enduring the same suffering. My sacrifices gained meaning when she achieved what I wanted most for her: a fulfilled, balanced life. When Peter turned 3, Helen made a decision that surprised me. She wanted a second child. I want Peter to have a brother or sister, she explained, and I want you there from the start, to experience a family, growing with love and planning, not fear and desperation. Helen's second pregnancy was even more special. I was fully integrated into the process. Ultrasounds, name selection Sophia, in honor of my grandmother, nursery preparations. When Sophia was born, Peter, then 4, said something I'll always treasure. Grandma, now our family is complete, isn't it? Why do you think that, sweetheart? I asked. Because there's enough love for everyone, he replied with childlike wisdom, and he was right. Our family had grown, not just in numbers but in their capacity to love, to be present, and to support one another without judgment or conditions. Helen had broken the cycle of emotional absence that defined my generation. Her children would grow up knowing they were loved not for what they could become, but for who they already were. At 58, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I chose to step down from day-to-day leadership, not because I was tired or ill, but because I had finally found something more important than work life. Helen assumed the presidency with maturity and vision, implementing changes that made our company more human and sustainable. She preserved the values we built together and added something I never knew to give: the balance between ambition and humanity. "I'm not afraid to take your place," she told me on the official transition day, "because I've learned I don't have to be you. I can be a better version, incorporating your strengths and correcting your weaknesses." And she was right. Under Helen's leadership, the company grew even more consciously and sustainably. She introduced family support policies, mentoring programs for working moms, and clear rules on work hours. She turned our company into a model of how to achieve professional success without sacrificing personal life. Now, at 62, I look back on a journey that, despite its mistakes and pains, ended in redemption. Peter, now 8, is a curious, loving boy who confides secrets in me. He won't even tell his parents. Sophia, 4, is a determined, bright girl who shows the strength of our women, but without the hardness I had to develop to survive. Helen became the woman I always dreamed. She'd be strong yet sensitive, ambitious yet balanced, independent yet willing to ask for help. She achieved what I thought impossible: a successful career without sacrificing motherhood, a respected leadership role without losing her femininity, a professional legacy without destroying personal bonds. Our relationship today is everything I didn't know was possible. We are mother and daughter, but also friends and partners. We talk about everything: work, family, fears, dreams, frustrations, joys. She seeks my advice when she wants it, but makes her own choices. I offer support when asked, but respect her autonomy. We have built a dynamic based on love and respect, not guilt or obligation. And I learned something fundamental: it's never too late to change. It's never too late to apologize. It's never too late to rebuild a relationship on healthier ground. It's never too late to break destructive patterns and forge new paths of connection. If you've read this far, you've likely identified with some aspect of it: a mom struggling to balance career and family, a daughter harboring resentment, or a woman still figuring out how to succeed without sacrificing relationships. Perhaps you've discovered that true success is measured not only in professional achievements, but in the quality of our bonds with those we love. The most important lesson I learned is that love doesn't have to be perfect to be transformative, that the wounds of the past can become bridges to a better future, that admitting our mistakes is not a sign of weakness but of courage, and that sometimes the most painful explosions are necessary to rebuild relationships on stronger, truer foundations. Today, when I see Helen with her children, I feel deep gratitude for all the mistakes I made, because they taught her to do it differently, because my absences taught her the value of presence, because my imbalances taught her the importance of balance. My pain had a purpose: to keep her from repeating the same patterns. And when Peter asks me why people who love each other sometimes fight, I answer with the wisdom only experience can give: because sometimes you have to break to rebuild better, my love. You have to lose yourself to truly find yourself, and you have to have the courage to admit you were wrong so you can learn to do it right. Last night, Helen called just to say she loved me. "Thank you for teaching me to be strong," she said, "and thank you for learning to be vulnerable. You've given me the best of both worlds." I hung up with a heart full of gratitude. Gratitude for the second chance life gave us, for Helen's courage to explode in that meeting, for the opportunity to be a present grandmother to Peter and Sophia, and for the discovery that true love is not the kind that never hurts, but the kind that has the power to reinvent itself after the pain. Today I know I was an imperfect mother, but I became a better grandmother. I made mistakes in the past, but I learned from them in the present. I built a professional empire, but my greatest achievement was winning back my daughter's heart and I will leave a legacy not of a successful business but of a family that learned to love unconditionally, forgive without resentment, and grow through adversity. The silence that once screamed between Helen and me has turned into a continuous conversation of love, understanding, and mutual growth. And that, I discovered, is the most beautiful symphony two women can compose together, the melody of reconciliation, healing, and renewed hope.